Are you ready for the third annual Gala Dinner? The Association of Zambians in Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia will this year host the third annual Gala Dinner on August 24th, 2024. There will be lots of exciting entertainment and we're expecting high-profile special guests. Be sure to stay glued to AZDMV Facebook page for more information. Save the date.
Hi everyone and welcome to the show. It is Saturday, July the 13th, and we're excited that you chose to join us today. We have an exciting conversation for you. Remember, tell a friend that ZBTR has gone live, and do follow us on social media. Those are our social media links. Just Google ZBTR TV on Facebook, YouTube, and X, which used to be YouTube before, and you will find us, because a lot of you do get in touch when you watch a show for the first time and you're like, hey, I would like to make sure that I don't miss it when you go live. So the best thing for you to do is just to follow us on the social media links and make sure that you click on the notification button so that when we go live, it will tell you that the show has gone live. Okay. Today we have an exciting show, an exciting guest, a trailblazer, and I'm excited to have this lady join us today. On the show today, we have Miss Mary Mbiya. She's CEO and consultant of MYM Strategic Solutions, and she's joining us from the great state of Michigan. Miss Mary.
Hello there. How are you? I see you've been busy.
I'm trying to be like you. I can't keep up with you. Don't start that, because I'm going to tell on you to the people watching that you've driven me crazy during this week. Everybody, this lady is busy. And Miss Mary, I want you to know that we don't take it for granted for you to be here and for taking the time for you to share your story, your journey, and, you know, for us to discuss a lot of things.
I am so grateful for the opportunity, Nathan. So I really, really want you to know I truly appreciate it. And just looking at all of the work that you've been doing, I'm really excited to have this conversation, and truly honored to be a part of to be a guest today.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Now, everybody, before we begin, I need to read. I just need to read this about Mary. You all need to hear this, okay? In 2021, Mary was recognized as Crane's Notable Executives in DEI, which is Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and awarded with the Diversity Champion Award recipient by the Troy Chamber of Commerce. Mary was also named as one of the 2019 Diversity Business Leader Award recipients by COP. All right. Corp Magazine and recognized by Dutton Farm as the 2019 Philanthropic Advocate of the Year. Whoa, you've been busy. In 2017, Mary was named Board Member of the Year by the Rochester Regional Chamber of Commerce and received the Leader of Leaders Award from Leadership Auckland. She was named one of the honorees of the 2016 Women of Excellence Award by the Michigan Chronicle.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Thank you so
now,
much.
I'm going to begin. I want us to begin with this question. How did you make the transition from the banking and financial world to diversity, equity, and inclusion? Two different worlds.
Yes. So thank you for asking that question, because a lot of times people are just like, okay, what is this? And I'm going to start off by saying I try to really live my life like a brand. And yeah, my background is in finance. I have an MBA in finance. And so I was doing the financial thing, trading, investing, leading financial centers in banking, and then decided to go the diversity, equity, and inclusion route, which I'll call DEI sometimes. But anyways, it's because there's much more to Mary than all of these titles and all of these things that we talk about on the day-to-day. But really internally, who is Mary? And Mary is made up of so many different diversity dimensions. So it's all of those things that make me different as a part of society, as a part of an organization. And so Mary is a female, single Black mom, and I have a teenage son. I'm a Christian at the core of who I am. I'm also, with a financial background and now going to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and then a little bit of fashion and all of these things.
Looking forward to talk about that.
Born and raised in Zambia, then went to the UK, and then, came to the US in 99. So there's so much that Mary brings, right? When you look at the different perspectives and the backgrounds. At the core of who I am, one day I was at work in the middle of meetings when I got a call from my son's school. And it's because they told me he was crying and that I needed to come and speak to him or pick him up from the school because another one of his classmates had told him that he doesn't like Black people. So for me, think about it. I'm growing up in Zambia where, there are so many leaders and like a lot of people doing amazing things, living really in harmony, right? And I'm not thinking about color. I don't even think at the time, because he had just come from a private school and going into public school, I don't even think that he knew really the difference between his color shade and all of that. So for me, though, I started to get a panic attack because even if I pick him up, what am I going to talk to him about, right? Where do I start? I'm a single Black woman. I just gone through my divorce and I'm just like, oh my, this is complicated. I called some of my friends and I believe I called his dad as well, my ex-husband. And it was just a journey that I was dreading. It was the longest 10 minutes of my life.
Wow.
And so to kind of have that conversation with the school, and they were surprised that I wasn't upset. If anything, my concern was for there to be some sort of education for the kids, because the kids are raised in their own households, right? And whatever they see or hear becomes a part of who they are. So as long as you have a brain, there are all of these things from our backgrounds and our experiences that make us who we are. So in saying that, my concern was, hey, how many kids are we going to kick out of the school if I start demanding that, oh yeah, the kid needs to be, expelled or whatever the case is? For me, my concern was, how do we educate these kids on diversity and inclusion? And that was where I started out. And so I didn't know much about it, but my concern in wanting there to be an opportunity for people to learn, because I've lived in so many different cultures, right? I lived in Zambia, I lived in England, and then now I live here. And my exposure to different cultures has been so enriching. And I was so grateful that my parents allowed me to really be who I am and freely have conversations and communicate. And so that's where that
diversity, it all begins.
And that's where it began. Then an opening came up at the organization I worked at the bank, where they were looking for the head of DEI. Never done it, right? But I just felt I could do it.
So you jumped into it.
I got certified and I applied. But you know what? Faith without works, it doesn't really
I know, right?
So I had a vision. I remember going out walking and really praying, right? This is a lifestyle, praying and seeking to God, like, hey, I think I can make a difference because I know that I can use my voice and I'm not afraid in different platforms, right? I can sit down with, the best of the best and be able to communicate what I need to communicate in a way that will be translated into action. So that's where my passion for DEI came from. So it's not anything that can really put fire to, it came from a very personal space. And so I was able to just really excel. And I was told a lot of people applied for that position, but I can tell you, I went in with an iron fist plan. I knew the culture of the organization. I knew enough to see how I would navigate that space and how I would make a difference. And the rest was history,
Wow.
So diversity is only those diversity dimensions that I mentioned, right? Like that make up the person. Then you start to peel the onion and build those relationships to really be able to communicate effectively and collaborate effectively so that the other person feels valuable. But at the core of it all, there's
get into it. That was going to be the next question. Let's discuss
that's the diversity
equity
piece. The diversity is the mix and the representation of the different layers. Okay. And then you come to, a lot of times people think that it's all about race, right? And it's really not. There's so many dimensions. Because you've got, in Africa, for example, you take a look at, socioeconomics play a huge role. Titles, those can kind of like sometimes interfere because are we able to really give our different perspectives when we're looking at all of those titles? So all of that, they're the dominant groups, and then there's the minority or subordinate groups in each one of these factors. So that's the diversity. How do we hear and value those voices that are sometimes coming from the subordinate groups and not from the dominant groups? Are we intentional in hearing those voices? And then, so that's diversity, representation, the mix of people. And then when you look at inclusion, that's the action, right? Sorry, let's talk about equity first.
Equity.
That's about fairness. Fairness is the word of the day when it comes to equity. And that's really, really an intentional word, because in order for you to be fair, it's not about what you think is fair only. Because what I might deem fair is not what you, Nathan, might deem fair. Your translation or definition of fair might look completely different. And the only way I can really figure that out is if I'm hearing your perspective of where, and then we meet in the middle, and then we can do something that is effective.
And Mary, that's where it becomes difficult when I'm hearing your perspective. Isn't that where the challenge comes in?
That's where the challenge is, the equity piece, right? The access. Do we really hear the people that have that lower, they don't have as much authority? Their voices are really small, but the impact that causes when they're excluded is really magnified because it causes so many problems. But how do we hear that and become fair? And a lot of times we don't, what we know is what we know, and how we want to deal with us, especially when we have power. Watch how people change when they get that power.
And my goodness.
Mitigating some of those things, like how do you regulate yourself when you're in that powerful space? And you can clearly see how people use or abuse power, right? Because it's different when you're looking at it from far. You think, oh, when I get there, this is what I'm going to do. But when you're in there and you now have that loud voice, you're not coming in from the underrepresented group, which is the subordinate group. You're coming in from a place of power and authority. What will you do with that power?
Exactly.
And can you manage yourself?
Now, before you go into inclusion, so how do we achieve that equity the equity thing of hearing the voices of the what do you call the subordinate groups, because it's a challenge.
So that's where inclusion comes in.
Okay.
Right? So inclusion is all about the action. What policies do we have in place? What practices have we put in so that we can intentionally, and the word intentional and deliberate, those two words are really the key of it all. Because if we just go on our day-to-day, we're not going to do it. We have to be intentional and deliberate to hear those voices that sometimes are not heard. And so that means
is that another way of saying we have to be willing?
Well, yeah, right. Self-will is all about being deliberate and intentional to hear, right?
Yes.
So the reason why I use the D and the E and the I is D and I, deliberate and intentional. If you forget, you can always remember, like, whoa, was I really intentional in hearing to the other voices that I might not be a part of? I mean, think about it. Okay, I'll give you an example let's look at Naomi Osaka and the Tennis Association, right?
Yes.
Remember when she was saying she couldn't play, she couldn't have those interviews because of her well-being, right? Wellness.
Yeah.
Well, whoever is making the decision, if they're not having any of those struggles, they can just quickly draft a communication that goes out, right? However, when you're a part of that group, you've got an intentional way of dealing with it. And so it's very important to kind of like get some people that will be able to have some input if you're not an expert, or listen to that group in a way that is empathetic. Because if you're not, it's easy to just like gaslight and brush it aside because you're not thinking about it. And that's where companies or organizations get into trouble, because they were not intentional. And then the group that understands that then speaks out, and then they come back and start trying to apologize, but it's too late. Could we have done something to really be intentional to hear those voices that we sometimes find difficult to hear? And so it's all about being deliberate and intentional. So getting that person that might give a different perspective, because you've got different people at the table, is very important. But if it's a monogeneous group and you don't have people that can kind of even tell you the truth, have psychological safety to tell you what they think about what you're proposing, it doesn't work well in the end. It will look like it's working well, but there's so much more opportunity. And that's why DEI is so important. So having that action through inclusive practices, policies, procedures, processes that include other voices at the table, so that you kind of make the right decision. And I'm actually writing a book that is going to have the checklist to be
you told me when the book comes out, we need to bring you back here.
Absolutely, I'd love to. I went to Zambia to start. I was writing in Zambia, and but of course, there's also the family stuff and everything else that I was working on in Zambia.
You can't write a book when you go to Zambia.
And all the beautiful landscape, right? I was trying to write in quiet spaces, and I was like, what? How come I've never known some of these places in Zambia? And then that was a distraction because it was so beautiful.
And then you couldn't write, you had to sightsee. Now that you mentioned,
the book is coming out in September, hopefully.
Okay, good, which is just in a few months. Yeah. And after I read it, then you can come back on the show.
Absolutely.
Since you've mentioned Zambia, let's talk about the strides that have been made in the area of diversity, equity, and inclusion in the past 10 years, 10 to 20 years, and how are things looking in Africa? Or you can address Zambia specifically.
Okay, I would love to address Zambia in particular. I am really impressed with the number of women that are in powerful positions. And also the number of programs that I was able to experience while I was in Zambia, that are there for, specifically for women. And while I was there, I also participated I was a part of the program for the Women in Foreign Policy that the Honorable Etambuyu Anamela Gatson, she actually had Women in Foreign Policy or in commemoration for Women's History Month. And I was so impressed. I mean, we had half a day of like different programs and sessions, all in an effort to empower women. And the UN was a part of it. And it was just absolutely fabulous. And to hear people that say, you know, I've never participated in something like this before. So that access to information, that intentional, because I mean, look at how busy she is, right? But for her to actually identify that there was, you know, she had been exposed to so much when it comes to being empowered, and she wanted to empower other women was absolutely phenomenal. And then just in the different spaces, I was able to see different programs that were there for women, and even in entrepreneurship, and like even with some of the women from the markets that were getting like different opportunities put in front of them. So all in all, for me, I don't know enough about some of the other programs out there, but I also do know that I was exposed to some of the women, some of the programs for the youth.
Okay.
And when you look at the shifting demographics in terms of census and representation, we've got a lot of youth in Zambia. So how do we fuel their passion for all of these different things? And they bring a different perspective to the table. When I was growing up, you know, we were always looking at the elders and for advice and for leadership. But now you find young people leading key roles, you know, like, and also being empowered to be able to be a part of that pipeline when it comes to succession planning. Really, really powerful. I mean, I know that there are certain things that need to be done when it comes to socioeconomics and stuff, like in terms of us hearing the people that they have nots, right? I think there's an opportunity, a lot of opportunities still, where we need to be intentional in the decisions that we're making.
Okay. We need to address this question that I'm going to ask you next. In recent years, we've witnessed women make significant strides. Obviously, the issue of diversity, equity, and inclusion is not just restricted to women, it's broad, like you have outlined. Sports, corporate jobs, movie industry, politics, what would you attribute this to? The recent thing we can talk about is women's soccer has just gone crazy. I mean, with our own band, and they could, I mean, you see.
I can't wait to go to a game, actually, because I'm just like so hyped. But I think that, you know what, it's all of these discussions in like from a world platform, the discussions on diversity, equity, inclusion, and you know, can they really feel like they belong once they get there? Because at the end of the day, you can have DEI, but the outcome that we want to get is that ability to belong. And that ability to belong is that we feel valued once we get to those spaces, right? That we looked at as in contributing in those spaces, and that we are recognized for what we do. So when we're paid less, sometimes it's because we don't know we can negotiate better. But a lot of times,
there it comes.
Because seriously, I've been in positions where I could have asked for more, but then I was thinking that it was the other way around. And then men are assertive. It's like, no, I can't do it for that, you know, for that amount. I've done my homework, and this is what I think I should be at. And based off my performance, this is ABCD. I expect to be paid this much. As women, you know, we're always taking care of everybody else. And it's hard for us to advocate for ourselves, right? And so sometimes we don't do our homework in what that starting point should be. I mean, I was in positions where I was hiring people, and I was just like, ask me for more. Please ask me for more.
Wow. So
I mean, in my head, I'd be saying that, but you know.
But when you are the interviewer, you can't lead on a person.
But in my head, that's what I'm saying. In my head, I'm saying, please ask me for more. And so I knew that earlier on. And don't forget, men will apply for positions even when they have only like 50 to 60% of their qualifications.
I know,
Whereas
right?
women, we're looking at 80, 90%. And when it comes to remuneration, compensation,
Yes.
we're actually overthinking it. And when it's not fair, in the past, have we spoken up enough, right? We haven't. We've been quiet about it, suffering peacefully. But now we're very, very open about it because platforms, like the people that are advocating for these programs like DEI, we've become more assertive and more outspoken, with Taraji P. Henson being one of the recent ones when it came to movies, right? And then look at the for football, I'm talking about soccer.
Yes.
The women really have been speaking up in what they were
Yes.
being paid. And then basketball now, women's basketball as well, right? Look at Caitlin and everything that's happening, right? And now there are more people going to watch. So, and that's in the space of being valued. There were great players even before.
Yeah,
but
and you heard what they said. The women's what do you call it? The women's basketball team. They're actually saying they will be using the same arenas the men are using because the numbers have gone up, the attendance. So they deserve the same respect.
Correct, but it wasn't as publicized, right? Now that we're talking about it and we're excited about it, and the key here is about normalization. What do we normalize and what do we become more open to sharing and normalizing? And then people see the value in it. But a lot of times when we wait for that to be normalized, when there've been great players like, Lisa Leslie and some of these players that played before, I mean, the games were good. I went to a few WNBA championship games when the Shock were in Detroit. Yes. And they were exciting games, but it was disappointing that the arena was not as full.
Yeah.
Right. And then look at the ticket prices as well. But now that we're going to see more endorsements and more things going on in that arena, I think it's going to change the game. But it's always been there. Those players have always been there. We just haven't put value to it, and now we're adding value to it. So it's all about normalization.
So that's what has brought up this situation. It's
because we're talking about it more, and I think we've empowered women to talk about it more in terms of compensation, and then knowing that it's okay to talk about it. Because before, it felt like it was a dirty discussion when we were talking about compensation, right? And we didn't even know how to have these discussions. And so when you sit women in the room and you start to kind of empower them with that information that makes it okay for them to talk about compensation, it then becomes a better way of just normalizing these conversations.
Wow.
And it doesn't mean because you've hired a woman that they're not skilled. They are skilled. Give them a chance to and hear them out and let those things that they recommend in the boardroom and those things that the different perspective that they have, because they're still the smaller voices in the boardroom, right?
Yeah.
So we still have to make sure that we're normalizing their voices and agreeing with some of the great things that they present instead of like taking away from it when we don't understand it. Why can't we allow this person to make sure that they are heard in those normal settings? And
before we take a break, and this is the part of the conversation I'm looking forward to, talking about your passion. You sit on a lot of boards. How are the numbers looking like?
When you say
what diversity, how diverse are the boards you're sitting on?
Usually, if we have more than 20%, 20, 30% in the boardroom, that's that. I mean, that I see a lot of 20% and 30%, but I haven't looked at the recent numbers in terms of like what they are in terms of a global perspective. But there's some companies like Germany, I think, that look like they ask for like a 40% representation of women in the board on the boards. But and then it's not enough to just be on the nonprofit boards, but what about the private boards, right? The publicly held for-profit. And so those we'd like to see more women represented on those boards and them making sitting on those powerful committees because it's not enough to just be on the board, but what kind of committees are you on? And are you being compensated for it? I mean, I got on my first paid board, I think 3 years ago now. And so, but that made a big difference. I wanted that. And it was important to me. But my work in the nonprofit side is what helped me get there.
Okay, good. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about Miss Mary's passion. My guest this morning is Mary Mbiya. She's a CEO and consultant at MYM Strategies and a fashion designer.
Hey, but I have to tell you something that I found out this year. So my dad was a colonel in the Army, and he's one of the people that advocated for women to actually be included in the military.
In the military, whoa.
So I was really excited to hear that. And we only just found out because somebody was thanking him. That was a part of that regime that actually saw him somewhere. And I was like, what? My aunt told me, because she was with my parents. And then then I asked my parents and they confirmed. And I was just like, wow, how come we didn't talk about it, because it would have helped my journey in this and for me to understand why I was so passionate. I know he really instilled integrity to us. And so like, this is not just, when I talk about my DEI journey, I think it's really who I am in terms of advocating.
Let me say this, Miss Mary, I'm frozen. What's the word? It's been there without you realizing it was there. Yeah. How many of us have got those situations in our life?
Right. And we don't talk about it, right? We don't talk about it because I didn't know I needed to have a voice to actually bring some of these things to light. But I can see the impact that I've had with me just talking about these things. And it's a lifestyle. For me, it's totally a lifestyle in my everyday
lifestyle. I like that lifestyle.
So my brand is totally a lifestyle brand because it's in everything that I do, the way I look at the world, the way I look on my day-to-day, even when I'm cooking. If I'm going to have a guest over, I want to make sure that I have a conversation or dialogue with them so that I'm not just cooking my favorite things. I want to make sure that I have something at the table that will represent them as well.
Which will represent them. So how do we marries a lot of things. So how does this financial expert, banker, diversity, equity, inclusion, entrepreneur, mentor, that part we haven't talked about, it's another financial advisor. Mary, where does fashion come into all this picture?
Think about it. Think about it though. We all need financial information, right?
Yes, we do.
And how we articulate to our clients or potential clients is going to be in how we hear what their needs are. That's all it is. We have to understand their needs and we have to be able to reach them so that they know that we have what they need. And so it's all a part of DEI.
Okay.
And I think the financial world gave me a good foundation because now when I go into these boards or when I'm speaking, I'm not just speaking from a feel-good factor for DEI, but I mean, I wish you could hear like the pieces that I speak from when it comes to, it's an imperative for any business organization to have DEI. First of all, we've got research that shows that it increases productivity and increases profit margins when you have DEI. Yeah, there's a McKinsey report that says diversity wins that you can look at. You can Google this information, but DEI done right, and I say done right, contributes to increased productivity and engagement for the employees, and which leads to higher profits. So there's so many different things that are going on. There's a shift that's going on in our world.
Yeah,
So think
yeah.
about it. Globalization. I used to learn about, oh yeah, globalization is taking place. It's happening. It's in full effect right now.
Oh, yeah.
And so to think of our country as just one country is doing a disservice, because this is like, the borders are very slim now because we can work anywhere in the world, right? We can work anywhere in the world. And when you look at the census numbers, the demographics
you can work anywhere in the world without being there in person.
Yeah, right. Technology has shifted all that, right? Yeah. So technology has advanced so much that it's shifted it. And then when you look at the demographics, the census demographics, like in Zambia, you see the youth have, like, we've got such a young population, right? In Africa, especially altogether. We've got a young population. And then you look at some of the countries in Europe, some of them have a declining population. Are we talking about that, right? Declining or aging population. And then you look at the US and you look at the minority groups, there'll be no majority rates. Like, so you're looking at no majority. I'm talking about demographics, right?
Yes.
So you're looking at a combination of minority groups are going to be making up the majority. So when you look at that, you can't afford to ignore even just some of these races, like within your day-to-day structure in terms of your companies or how you make decisions. You've got to make them a part of who you are. In Africa, you've got to make the youth a part of your decision-making, and be very deliberate and intentional on how you're bringing some of these people at the table so that there's sustainability. And companies that think that they can do without DEI are really thinking small. And those are companies that, I mean, if they want me to talk to them, I will, but I'm focused on the ones that understand that this is an imperative and they need to do something. And then I help with the implementation of those programs and making sure that they're doing them in a way that will give them the returns.
So your fashion line actually featured at Michigan.
Michigan Fashion Week.
Michigan, that's not small. I mean, you're not doing it like something that you're just doing. You have a little machine in your bedroom, Mary. This is not small.
So, when I look at my brain and I look at all these things, like, I'm always doing serious stuff, right? Especially with diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's a lot. It's very complex. And I think that sometimes we're not heard or appreciated. And that sometimes you need something that will fuel that passion. I mean, we've got a great support group, but at the same time, it's a very complicated role to be in. I mean, people see the glamorous piece and they think,
the fashion thing. Yeah. Let me show
I'm
some
talking
things.
about, so when I'm shifting, so when I'm saying all that stuff with DEI is very complex and very serious, right? So I needed something that would still give me some self-care, things that I love. And I love to hang out with my friends. I've got a board of my friends, and we have board meetings to talk about day-to-day things that are happening. And then I also wanted to just use my piece, because I'm not a very creative person, but I knew I had it in me because I love fashion. And so I wanted to do something that would fuel that. And that's how I ended up saying, I'm going to try this. First, I was doing it just for myself. And then my friends were just like...
Just making your own clothes?
Yeah, I don't sew them myself. I used to sew when I was younger, then I lost it because I hurt myself on my finger. To understand me is to kind of know my background. My mom was a home economics teacher at Roma Girls.
Okay.
And then my sister, that's all she does. She's got tailors that work for her, and she's an impeccable, like, she sews really well. So I had that in her, right? She could make out what I was designing on the surface. But my mom encouraged us to kind of like do that the maintenance in terms of like the home values and us being independent. She taught us that part. And so that's where that came from. When I started to relax my brain and I was like, I want to use a different part of my brain and really bring that out so that I can still be using both parts of my brain. And that's how I started the fashion thing.
Walk us through this. Walk us through this.
So that particular piece, I wanted the elegance. I wanted to be able to go to galas. That's how this started. Galas, going to a department store and be able to buy something like that in the store.
Oh,
I could never find something in African fabric. So this is a piece that I always, in my fashion shows, I always want to have in the showcase, the gala kind of outfits, and also for it to be pieces that you can kind of maintain throughout in your wardrobe. And this piece, I wanted to show that Africa also has lace. Like you can wear it and, you know, bridging the Western world and some of our fabric together, but being able to get it. And then I love to play with color. So you see a lot of color. And then this particular piece, it was very popular. And I love that I started without the tulle at the bottom of the dress, and then I included the tulle because I wanted it to have some bounce, and very, very popular at Fashion Week for that showcase.
Wow.
And but there's some pieces that stood out more than others. And so now I'm like listening to my audience in looking at what they need to, like what they like and what they want to see from this particular brand. So I'm still doing my focus group manufacturing, but only manufacturing the pieces that I think are going to be popular. But what I want to do is intentionally figure out which pieces need to be ordered and only produce so that I can share it with the department store. Now, this particular piece that's walking through became my most popular piece, and I wouldn't have thought that would be it. I like to play with stuff. And so the collar, I call this dress the pop the collar, and it was very, very popular in the showcase.
So when something like this happens, do people make orders? When I say business, people make orders for their outlets or stores? Or
well, this one, I'm actually working using these pieces to actually find this will probably go in next year or maybe next year's summer, because they have to order from this collection, and then that's when it gets manufactured. But then the challenge that I've been facing is too, when I'm looking for the fabric, because I have to I made some additional pieces that I can sell individually, but I'm not really looking to do that. If people want some, I can always sell some of those. But for me, what I really want is to do it in bulk. So my business background is now telling me that I don't want to do it. I know what the norm is, but at the same time, I know what my business mind is telling me. I want to showcase what I can do, and I want some department stores that will believe in me and want to try me out. And that's what I would love to do. Create and place big orders to be able to get my own fabric, so that the fabric, like actually manufacture and make my own fabric. Because what's happening is by the time I'm getting a lot of orders in something, I can't find the fabric anymore.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't know that was going to happen, but now that it's happening.
Where do you get your fabric, Mary?
Zambia.
Really?
Yes. I get it from Zambia. And, one of the things that I want to do is also empower others.
Yes, you
in
did
doing this. I'm very intentional.
Yeah.
I get some of the pieces of jewelry from, I get some of them from Kenya, and then I get the fabric from Zambia and also from.
Talking about jewelry, is this what's this?
No. That one we got from here. That piece was from here.
Oh, okay.
So I've got stylists that actually help me with this. I mean, it does cost money, but not as much money as it would be for me to manufacture in bulk like I want to. And so it will be, what I'm trying to do is, even though I'm going to manufacture, I'm going to still be limited editions. I want it to be very special, and I want for people to buy as soon as they see them. So my strategy is just tweaked a little bit in how I want the collection. Now I want the visibility and all of that to be known for the brand.
This question is for a friend who asked me to ask you this question. You know, this year is special for Zambia, 60 years.
Yes.
Yeah, and we have some big event coming up in DC, the Zambia 60 years independence.
And I voted. And I voted.
You
because
did?
You're going to the question, I voted.
No, the question is, there are people who asked me to say, can she take orders for special outfits for that event?
Oh, I would love to.
Okay.
I would love to, because actually I have some fabric that I have made, that I have purchased within the last month.
Yes.
That is still in Zambia. And then the people that are manufacturing for me right now are in Zambia as well. So I'm using a Zambian company. And then I've just also located a company that's going to be manufacturing here in Detroit. They were at the fashion show. So I'm going to use both so that, for depending on how fast or what is needed. Now, last year I did quite a number of personalized pieces. It all depends on what they want. If they want things from that collection or they want things that are personalized, we would have to talk about that.
Okay. Yeah. How do they get in touch with you?
You know what? I thought you had my Instagram. It's the Mbiya collection.
Mbiya collection.
Instagram. Yeah, they can just reach out to me through that platform.
Mbiya collection. Okay, so Instagram, just go to Instagram, everybody, in Mbiya collection.
And just send me a DM me, and I'll be able to kind of reach back out.
That's good. Wow, Mary, I feel like I'm just beginning. I'm fired up. We have, now this is where your entrepreneurship mentorship comes in, I think, as we wind up our conversation. We have a lot of people who are passionate about a lot of things, and they have this entrepreneurship thing in them. They feel stuck. What's your advice?
When you first start out, I think don't just like sometimes people will be able to give up everything knowing that they can do something better, right? But my thing is, if you're working, continue to work and try and do it as a side hustle, and then fine-tune it so that you can at least still be able to pay the bills, because at the end of the day the bills are still there. Exactly. But if you're going to figure out a way of saving money and still be able to follow your dream. Like if you're going to move back into your parents' house, and then save that money that you were using for rent or to pay mortgage, then that's different. I mean, you can still pursue that dream. It all depends on what your passion is. But I think, to me, right now, with the way technology has taken over and the ability to be able to reach so many people, I think there's an opportunity there to do so many awesome things. Using social media during the hours when people are sleeping, you can at least put in some hours into it. But don't give up your dream. And if you feel so strongly about it, go all out. But I'm always that conservative person. Even when I'm trading, I will hedge, because I want to make sure that I've thought about the contingent plan and what I'm going to do if I lose it. Do I have anything that will offset it? And I like to diversify my portfolio. So always be thinking about what that looks like, because there's so many different people that need different things. If that product or service is not needed anymore, what are you going to do? And how are you continuing to keep pace with the market? Because right now with AI and all of these different things, there's so much that's coming up, right?
Yes.
And we have to think different. And so you always have to be very innovative and creative in maintaining that. But through it all, stay grounded and make sure that you're listening to the market.
Wow, that's powerful. Stay grounded and make sure you're listening to the market. Wow, Mary, I feel like we should do this for 2 hours.
Then it won't be fun, because people will just be like, hey, I've been listening to this for so long.
I know, right? I know.
Break. But
well, I just want to say, you know what? Thank you for taking the time. And there's a lot to talk about, but what I'll do is I'll wait until the book is out, and then we can pick up this conversation.
And you know what? The other piece of advice in terms of the entrepreneurship before we go off is there's a lot of information right now. When we don't get the information out there through the internet or through programs, when I was in Zambia, I participated in Indawa, and which was at Mulungushi Conference Center. And I'm telling you, I was disappointed because there was such great information shared, very minimal participation in terms of the room wasn't full. I never even registered right from the beginning, right? But I was in Zambia and I found time to attend. So we can't make excuses in that, oh yeah, this is not there, oh, I don't know. You don't know because you're not intentionally finding these things. We have to stop making excuses and start acting to get the resources that are already there.
That's right.
And the same applies here. There's so many resources, and I have to push myself to think different on how I want to make sure that I also take some time out to kind of look at the resources that are there.
That's right.
So I'm sorry, but
no,
I want
you're
to
good.
go back to that because
the
other thing was so good. I was like, where are the people?
Yeah, unfortunately. Wow, everybody, that was our show. Mbiya.
Thank you, Nathan. So good to speak with you.
I am
really
glad
appreciate the opportunity.
You did. Thank you for taking the time. I know you are crazy busy, and we made this happen. I'm looking forward for us doing much more for our people.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm looking forward
absolutely.
For us. We will go. So I'll see you in DC in October.
I'm definitely coming to that.
All right.
I think we have a mutual friend that is like a part of the committee, because I was listening to like all of the stuff that was going on when all the voting was taking place. So DC for sure. Yeah,
we're showing up in big numbers. Have a good one, Mary. We'll catch up later. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right. Yeah. Well, everybody, that was our show. Mary Mbiya there, and sharing some exciting things and some exciting news. We do look for, follow us on social media and make sure you click the notification button so that you don't miss anything that comes up. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and we'll see you next weekend.
Are you ready for the third annual Gala Dinner? The Association of Zambians in Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia will this year host the third annual Gala Dinner on August 24th, 2024. There will be lots of exciting entertainment, and we're expecting high-profile special guests. Be sure to stay glued to AZDMV Facebook page for more information. Save the date.
Zambia Blog Talk Radio.